Hi, I'm Daniel Benbow, and it's my job to take care of some of the animals here at Zoo Atlanta. With over 850 mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians with us on grounds, we're responsible for animals and habitats representing places all over the world. But what's it like when we decide to add a new exhibit? More specifically, how do we take an empty space and transform it into a brand new warthog and meerkat habitat? There's a lot more to it than you might think. There was selecting new species, identifying the right individual animals, finding a builder. None of these things was exactly in the yellow pages. And these were all things that had to happen before we even broke grounds. But I'm not going to stand here talking about it all day when we can go behind the scenes and see for ourselves. Join me for an inside look at what it takes to turn a great idea into a grand opening. Each of the species at Zoo Atlanta represents just one piece of the enormous diversity of animal and plant life on Earth. When we say diversity, we're talking about thousands, even millions of species. There's a lot to choose from, but we have a criteria to narrow that down. We're in search of animals that will complement our existing collection and help us convey our education message. We're also looking for species with interesting natural behaviors our guests will have a great time watching. So how does Zoo Atlanta decide which new animal to exhibit?
Ooh, it's getting closer.
Dr. Rebecca Snyder explains.
We did some survey work at the zoo a couple of years ago and asked visitors to the zoo what sorts of animals they would be interested in seeing the zoo add to their collection. The two things that came out of that was that they would like to see more mammals and more birds at the zoo.
When choosing animals for a new exhibit, the habitat location is a key deciding factor. For our newest exhibit, Kalahari Connections, we chose to expand our African plains habitat with animals of the African savanna and Kalahari Desert, the warthog and meerkat.
I wish I had a pet one, a baby pet one.
The African plains habitat simulates the terrain of the East African savanna, one of the country's premier naturalistic environments for multiple species. The African plains of Zoo Atlanta is home to elephants, giraffe, lions, zebra, black rhino, and gazelles, as well as African grasslands birds.
Part of it's the space, where we were going to put them. We're putting them in the heart of Africa over there. We wanted to have animals that weren't necessarily from East Africa, maybe representative of the rest of Africa. So both warthogs and meerkats are actually representative of South Africa. And then they both have smaller space requirements, and that was kind of a little nook and cranny in the zoo that we wanted to fill.
Two recognizable animals made famous by Disney's Lion King, the warthog and meerkat, will add a fascinating and important link to the African ecosystem at the zoo.
We chose warthogs for our exhibit because they're very charismatic. People really like them. They are not afraid of people in a lot of instances, so they're going to come up close to the glass. They also don't need a lot of space, so they fit very well into the spatial plan we had here at the zoo.
What's your plan?
Meerkats tend to be very popular with zoo visitors because they're cute and they are very active usually, very dynamic. They have a lot of qualities that make them ideal zoo animals in some ways because they're diurnal, so they're active during the day when all the zoo visitors are here.
These are all the girls.
These charismatic and active animals are an ideal addition to the zoo. Now the needs of these animals must be identified to begin planning the exhibit. Do they need sun or shade? What kind of plant life are they used to? To answer these questions, their wild habitats must be researched.
Planning an exhibit for meerkats, we have to think about how they live in the wild. First of all, we start with that. We also look at how other zoos have housed them in the past and try to learn from that. And we try to build an exhibit that's going to meet all of the animals' needs. So for meerkats, they live in open spaces, dry places, so we gave them a lot of sand. They're burrowing animals. They like to do a lot of digging, so the sand will be good for that. We've made some tunnels for them because they're burrow living, which they will have to live in, so we just tried to mimic some of the features of their natural environment.
Warthogs need shade. Where we put them in the zoo, we have very nice trees around it, so it provides shade throughout the day. We also provided tunnels for them to hide in, and the tunnels look like fallen logs, and they were created here on grounds. And we also created a mud wallow. They need to stay cool and keep the bugs off them.
The species are chosen and their needs are identified. The next step is finding the perfect warthogs and meerkats to live at the zoo.
Zoos acquire their animals from other zoos. The meerkats that we will be receiving are coming from the North Carolina Zoological Park. The first thing we do, we look on the list of available animals, which is a list that's maintained by the AZA, which is the American Zoo and Aquarium Association. And zoos that have animals available to be sent to a new home will list those animals on that exchange. And we found our meerkat group actually on that exchange list. They were looking for a new home for them.
Hey, Mom, he's looking at me.
The new meerkats are also part of a special program called the Species Survival Plan, or SSP.
For meerkats, they're not an endangered species. They're quite common in the wild, so that SSP just makes sure that the population is well managed, also that they preserve the genetic variability. Genetic variability is important because we want to preserve as much of the gene pool that's currently in the captive population as we can. So it's important to have a healthy population to make sure that individuals who are breeding with each other aren't closely related, and to make sure that individuals who have had lots of offspring aren't the only ones having offspring, and that those who have fewer or no offspring are higher priority to breed them.
The warthogs, 1-year-old Vern and Shirley, were handpicked for future breeding. Vern arrived from the Erie Zoo in Erie, Pennsylvania, while Shirley hails from a private facility in Texas.
We work with other zoos to determine population plans, and so we were able to contact other zoos to determine who would be a good match as far as a future breeding pair, and we brought in 2 animals. They're a good genetic match, so hopefully they'll make some babies for us later on.
With the animals on their way to the zoo, it's time to finalize exhibit plans and get construction underway. Where do the animals stay at night? Stay tuned for the answer and a look at the construction of Kalahari Connections. To ensure their safety, we provide separate indoor structures for our animals. And this is where the majority of them spend the night. I'm standing right in the middle of a great example. It's the zoo's tallest barn, built for the zoo's tallest residents. Guess who? If you said giraffe, then you were right. When it comes to constructing an exhibit, what we build behind the scenes is just as important as what we build for our guests to see. As I'm sure you know, construction takes time, even when you're building for humans. You can imagine the special considerations and specifications that go into building for wild animals. Let's talk to a few more people, see if we can find out why. It takes months of planning and lots of work to design and build a new exhibit. Wild habitats are researched and then simulated as much as possible. The habitats have to be waterproof and built so the animals can't get out, but the keepers can easily get in. It takes a lot of people to make sure these habitats are just right.
Exhibits are designed by a group of people. We have curators who are part of that design process. We have architects, our folks from our education department who will be involved in graphics planning are part of that. People who are in charge of facilities are part of that as well. So it's really a team effort.
There are many specifications necessary to keep the animals inside their habitats. Meerkats are expert climbers and diggers, so the builders had to make sure they couldn't climb or dig out of their new home.
Meerkats can climb, so we had to build the exhibit to contain them, of course. So the walls are 5 feet tall, which is pretty tall for an animal the size of a meerkat, and they are painted in epoxy paint, which makes the walls kind of slick so that they can't climb those things. We made a sand substrate for them to dig in, but underneath that is actually a steel mesh grid to make sure that when they dig, they can't dig out of the exhibit. Then we actually are going to construct burrows for them, so we'll give them artificial burrows.
The warthog habitat also had a few challenges. First, it had to be strong enough to hold Vern and Shirley. They're small and cute now, but Vern could grow to be 250 pounds. The warthog habitat also sports a rounded design, so they can't corner one another. Another challenge is finding greenery that Vern and Shirley won't eat.
We had to include plants in the exhibit that if the animals did eat them, they would not hurt them. So we're trying some Elaeagnus plants, some wax myrtle plants, just to see if we can find something that they don't like to eat. But it's going to be a challenge, and we have our horticulture staff on grounds ready to go with something new in case they do eat what's in there.
The builders and subcontractors have worked hard to meet the requirements for each exhibit, transforming what was a vacant piece of zoo real estate into 2 luxury habitats in a matter of months. Now that the habitats are finished, it's time for the animals to check out their new homes.
Look how he gets up on his hind legs to look.
The animals have been hanging out behind the scenes while their habitats are completed.
First thing they did is take them to our veterinary clinic, which is where the quarantine holding is for most of our animals. And they normally would stay in quarantine for 30 days, is regular quarantine for most animals. And that's just to make sure that they're healthy, that the stress of the move doesn't cause them to get sick or anything like that. We just want to make sure they're in the best health possible.
Introducing the animals to their new home is very important. The meerkats are being introduced in groups, girls first, and then the boys.
And we have to put them in kennels individually, but we will put those kennels facing each other so they can all see each other, and then open them at the same time so that the group can experience the exhibit at the same time and explore it together.
We try not to put our animals under any extra stress, so we use a lot of operant conditioning training or positive reinforcement training to get them to participate in their own management, so to speak. So we're actually going to train her to walk into a crate so that we can shut the door in the crate and move her right down to this habitat.
Once everyone is settled and the habitats are ready, it's time to move in. So what is life like for the animals in their new home? What do they eat? What do they do? In the wild, meerkats eat insects, snakes, and mice. Meerkats are immune to scorpion venom, which comes in handy because scorpions are a favorite part of their wild diet.
They eat a little bit of fruit and vegetable. They eat some apples, oranges, a little bit of lettuce. But the main part of their diet is meat, so it's a specially prepared carnivore diet that they get, which we actually roll into little balls for them. It looks a little bit like hamburger, but it's ground beef. And they also get a biscuit that is called omnivore biscuit, and we actually crush that up and mix that in with the rest of their food.
The warthog's wild diet is also a little different from their zoo diet.
Warthogs in the wild are going to eat a lot of different things. Primarily, though, it's going to be roots and bulbs of plants. But the warthogs are very unique because they're adapted to also eat grass on the savanna in their wild habitat. So here at the zoo, they're going to eat a bunch of different things, primarily a pig pellet that's specially formulated for wild swine, and some hay and some fruit and some apples and carrots and treats.
What do these guys do all day? One thing they enjoy is the enrichment provided by their keepers.
Enrichment for animals, that just means that we change their environment in some way. It could mean that we give them toys or new items, could mean that we do something different socially for them, could mean that we change their exhibit, like move around the furnishings in the exhibit. Anything like that can be enrichment. Enrichment, I think, is really important for all the animals at the zoo because they're in a smaller space than they would be in the wild usually. They don't have as many things changing typically here in the zoo as they would in the wild. We need to provide that for them. We need to provide stimulation and change and new things. The meerkats are going to be a lot of fun because they're very curious animals and they're small. One of the most enriching things to them, which we will be doing, is just feeding them live insects. So they'll be getting crickets and things regularly, and then they actually will get to hunt for those, and so that's very natural behavior that you'll get to see them do.
Do the keepers at Zoo Atlanta go in with the animals? Stay tuned for the answer and more with our keepers. One thing that is important to remember is that zoo animals are still wild animals. So while we can and do form special bonds and relationships with the animals we work with every day, we don't compromise our safety by entering an enclosure with a potentially dangerous animal, no matter how friendly or intelligent that animal is. That's just one of the many things our animal care staff has to remember on any given day. Let's meet Vern and Shirley's keeper.
Does anybody else have any questions about the warthogs? My name is Jenny and I am a keeper in the large mammal department at Zoo Atlanta. I work with the giraffes, rhino, zebra, various antelope species, and our newest addition, the warthogs. A typical day in the lives of a warthog keeper, we come in every morning and come down and check on the warthogs. They get locked in overnight holding every night, so we come check on the animals and we clean their exhibit from the day before. The warthogs are very, very good diggers, so we fill any holes that they may have made, and we will take out any old mess that they've made in the yard, any old food, and we'll put out new food and put out a clean bowl of water for them every day. We put the warthogs out anywhere from between 7:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning, and then they have access to the exhibit all day long, and then around 4:30 we come back down to the barn and set the barn up for the evening. We give both warthogs a bed of hay. They get fresh produce and grain. Vernon and Shirley are both still young warthogs, so they're not fully grown yet. They're going to keep growing. Right now, they look pretty similar, besides Vernon being a little bit larger. But as Vernon, our male, continues to grow, his tusks and his facial warts will continue to grow. So you'll be able to differentiate between the male and the female a lot easier as they get larger. We are doing training with the warthogs. They are new here to the zoo, so they're still learning, but they're very smart animals, and in the future, we're going to have a very, very involved training program with the warthogs. My favorite part about being a keeper is definitely that I get to be outside and I get to be active all the time. The animals, you never know what they'll do, and they're just wonderful to work with. It's great to be able to come in every day and see these beautiful animals that most people don't get a chance to see.
Does the zoo get new animals from the wild? We'll be right back with more. Since part of our mission is to protect wildlife and ecosystems, as a general rule, we don't remove animals from their natural habitats. While we do have some older animals here that were born in the wild, the overwhelming majority of our new animals were born in similar institutions accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. Luckily for you, you don't have to travel all over the world to see wild animals and habitats. Today we have another exciting opportunity to bring the world to you at the grand opening of our new warthog and meerkat exhibits.
They have 4 large-sized molars in their mouths. They get 6 sets in their lifetime.
The zoo is a great place to learn all about our animal neighbors, including what you can do to help protect wildlife and ecosystems. The Kalahari Connections exhibit provides a unique learning experience because it showcases 2 species that are not endangered. The warthogs are the ultimate adapter, while the meerkats rely on family to survive.
In the warthog exhibit, you're going to learn a lot about a kind of a unique animal. They're very well adapted. Unlike a lot of animals in Africa, they're not endangered because they can adapt to different situations. They adapt well to living around human populations. You're going to see how it fits in with the rest of the African animals here. They live in aardvark burrows. They help keep the ground aerated. And hopefully you'll just learn about a really cute, charismatic pig.
The meerkats provide an example of animal family structures. Each mob of meerkats is led by a dominant male and female, often the mother and father. The older siblings also help watch after the young.
The meerkats also take turns acting as sentries for each other. A few individuals will sit up on something high and watch for predators while other individuals in the group are busy digging and searching for food. And if they see something that's potential danger for the rest of the group, they'll make an alarm call and warn the group so that they can all hide in their burrows in time. They're pretty vocal. They do a lot of making sounds to each other that's kind of like conversation. We're hoping that people will learn how important it is to protect wild habitats and the species who live in them. So I think by having animals here at the zoo that people can come and see, they get a sense of how special these animals are and how important it is for us to make sure that they continue to share this planet with us.
The zoo provides an educational and recreational resource unlike any other. Families and safari day campers can come and enjoy the day learning about their wild counterparts and how we can share the world. These new warthog and meerkat habitats are just one more great opportunity to learn about the amazing animals that call our planet home. After months of planning, researching, and building, the animals are settled in their habitats and the ceremonial vine is ready to be cut.
My name is Dennis Kelly. I'm president and CEO of Zoo Atlanta. Thank you for being here. You know, Atlanta and Georgia have been growing dramatically. And one of the main reasons we can grow is because of Georgia Power and the Southern Company getting the region ready to grow. We've been growing here at Zoo Atlanta as well. We've been growing in our Asia exhibits with our giant panda family, growing with Melan. We've been doing a lot of work with reptiles and amphibians, but one of our strengths is our great connection with Africa. So today, we're really proud to announce the addition of warthog and meerkat here to Zoo Atlanta.
2 and 3.
Good job, Dennis.
You can see now that new exhibits don't just crop up overnight. There are a lot of ins and outs between imagining what might be possible for an empty space and then turning that space into warthog wallows or meerkat burrows. But look at the rewards. We finally reached our favorite part, getting to know our new warthogs and meerkats and providing them with the best possible care so that you can get to know them too. Come on out. I'll see you at the zoo.
We hope that you've enjoyed watching this behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to build an exhibit here at the zoo. Come see the rewards of all our hard work by visiting the warthogs, meerkats, and all the other wonderful animals at Zoo Atlanta. For more information and tickets, visit zooatlanta.org.